Okay, so now you've got your teacup drawn out. I've mixed a little bit of blue with a lot of white gouache. You want a creamy consistency, so you want some water in it, but not a great deal. And I'm just going to turn it to one side like this, and I'm just going to run that down the paper. I'm using a large round watercolour brush here, and you can see that as long as the consistency is right, you should get a nice even coverage with the gouache. The gouache is great. It's opaque, so it's very different to watercolour, but it's water based, so it means that you can re-wet it and work it again if you need to. So it's covering those pencil lines really nicely. And gouache is used by illustrators and graphic designers mainly because it photographs really well. So when you've finished your painting and it's all dry, the colour is so even that the light bounces off of it evenly, and that makes for a good photographic image. So obviously then it will print nicely. So if you're into card making or illustration of that nature, then this is the medium to go for. But I like painting in it because it's flat and it is opaque, so you can't see through it, unlike the watercolour. So I'm using my detail brush here just to get in that section around the cup handle. Make sure you have enough paint on your brush. If by some chance, like for example, you've added too much water and it becomes transparent on you again, then you can always add another coat. Okay, so you can see how beautiful that is, how the coverage works so nicely. And the other nice thing about it is you can let the paint go off. So this palette, even though it will go dry, once you add water to it again, it will restore. So now what to choose for the surface. So we've got blue here, so I'm going to choose a complementary. So a complementary would be either something sitting either side of the blue spectrum or an orange. So let's go for, I don't know where I've got any orange actually. No, I haven't. So in that case, I will try a purple. Now you might not have the range of colours that I've got here in my set. I've got these in little pill boxes because I had some old tubes that were falling apart, so I emptied them into pill boxes, and they go dry, but they will revitalise as soon as you put water on them. So again, I'm going to lighten it up by adding white, and then I'm going to just take a large brush again, and I'm going to dip my brush into the purple and just re-wet it, get it going. It'll take a little bit of time if it's gone hard like this, but it will sooner or later just start. You can see there that there's a bit of colour coming out. If you're using it directly out of the tube, then obviously you don't need to do this because it'll already be wet. You might not have a purple, so what do you do if you haven't got a purple? I'm going to mix probably some red and some blue together and experiment with different shades according to what blues and what reds you have in your palette. So because this is quite a big area, we need to mix quite a lot of this colour. I'm sorry if you can hear thumping in the background, but somebody seems to be beating carpets next door. Or something of that nature. Could be anything. Okay, so there's the the sort of pale purple colour. I'm going to try and get this moving a bit more with a smaller brush. See if I can get some stronger pigment in there. So there we go, it's starting to move now. I'm going to put the purple down here. Hopefully it started raining so they'll stop thumping. But you never know round here. Okay, let's try that, see how that changes the colour of, not much, but you know, I think that's good enough. Maybe a bit more. So just work it. Actually, there's a big puddle there. Let me get that out there. Okay. Hopefully that's going to be enough. So again, I'm going to have a shadow mark on the surface. You can turn this vertically again, as lines are easier to paint if they're vertical. And this paintbrush has a nice point on it. I don't know whether you can see that, which makes it easy to get into corners. If your brush doesn't have a point on it, then please use a detail brush to get into those corners, because otherwise you'll get yourself in a mess. So currently I'm just going to paint around the shadow just in case I run out of paint, but I don't think I will. So you can see that the brush is quite big and it's covering, oops, really quickly. And that is why the coverage looks nice and even. If you were using small brushes for this job, you'd end up with lots of lines in the paint. So don't use small brushes, but again, it's a skill to paint with gouache evenly. I mean, the gouache does help you because it's a nice paint to use, but if you have trouble getting even surfaces, then the bigger the brush, the better. Let me just take a small brush again so I can get into that little fiddly area. I had plenty of paint after all. So the one thing to remember is if you've got uneven surface, then you can always put another coat of this on after you've finished, after it's dried. So you can see there's a bit of a patch there. I don't know why that is. It might just be that that blob of paint was a bit watery. And what's dangerous is actually putting paint down on top, because effectively you're painting another layer there. So, you know, you might have to go over the whole surface again. This is still wet, so we should be okay, actually. I'm just repainting over the whole surface just to make sure there's no patches. I don't necessarily have to do it over here because it's still wet. Okay, there we go. So now the next thing would be to wait for that to dry, or dry it off with a hair dryer. I'm going to dry it off with a hair dryer to show you how quickly it dries. Okay, you ready? that's more or less it. You can see I've got some little tiny gaps where I've missed it. You don't see these until you finish painting. So take your paintbrush and just blob them in, and hopefully they won't show up too much. I'm going to put another bit over there, missed a bit there. Just spread them out a bit. Okay, so the next thing to do is to put some white onto the cup. So again, just gouache. Always buy yourself a big tube of white gouache. Go through it like nobody's business. Okay, big brush again. Make sure it's spotlessly clean. And into the white. So I've just got white gouache here on its own. And just let that water break it down a bit. Okay, just enough water, single cream consistency, and then we're going to just paint in. Now the problem here is that because gouache is so efficient, it covers your lines. So when we come to do the areas around the flowers, it is a matter of painting around them. Now what you can do is, before you put your flowers on, is to actually, sorry, we've got some very loud cars going past, is paint the gouache on first. So just draw the cup, paint the gouache on, and then let it dry and draw your flowers on. So that is an option rather than fiddling around. And you can see how different tonally the white of the gouache is to the white of the paper. It's almost pink. If you miss a few bits, hey, it doesn't matter. But it is important that we get those areas painted in thoroughly. We live here on the A4069, and when we moved to the countryside we didn't expect it to be so noisy. But apparently the A4069 is Jeremy Clarkson's favourite road. He went on television and said that it was his favourite road. And as a consequence, we get cars, motorbikes coming up and down here, creating a racket. And, you know, they're going out for a fun day with their cars, I get that, but they don't seem to realise that we get hundreds of the damn things coming through every day. It's like a racetrack. Awful. Anyway, okay. Pieces restored, they've gone. I can hear them now going up the mountain. The reason why they like it as well, apparently, is because it's got a 9-mile stretch without any turn-offs or something. I don't know whether that's true, but it means that they can just go as fast as they like without realising it's really dangerous. Okay, so there we have. I'm just going to do the handle. And again, if this is a bit fiddly for you to do with your big brush, then change over to a smaller brush. There we go. Okay, I'm going to leave that there. So the next thing to do while it's drying off is to decide what colour you want to do your flowers. So I'm going to do a big sort of daisy-like shape flower, yellow. I'm just going to wet them down so that they moisten in time for when I need to use them. And a yellow and maybe a pink of some kind. Let's see now, can I get this one out without getting too... I know that some of these have leaked a bit. So I might get a bit messy. I've got like a cerise colour here, which I wouldn't mind using. A magenta and a red. And then you've got some greens. You need some greens and maybe some black or something dark, just to, in fact, have I got any green? I don't seem to have any green, so I might have to mix. Oh no, I do. Let's see now. Again, it's a bit messy. So I've got a series of green here, colours. There's like an emerald, a viridian, and looks a bit like a sap green, or maybe even like a turquoise colour. So again, get your colours ready. That one's quite wet already. This one's quite dry. And we're just going to use a series of small brushes to create our patterns. Now there's no reason why you couldn't paint your own cup. So if you've got a little teacup at home, then you could have a go at painting your own cup. You could even make your own design up. So, you know, be creative with it. You don't just have to follow the drawing that I've given you. And it is literally just a sort of painting by numbers aspect now. And again, you can leave them really flat, or you can go into detail with your paints. So if you wanted like lines or shadows or stigma and stamen and all that sort of thing on your flowers, then you could. Check that it's dry. Well, it's not quite dry there, I can see. So let's make, I think round here is okay, yeah. So I'm going to go in with this one and balance your hand so that you're nice and solid. Now you might see the lines through this. This is a yellow. Yellows are notoriously difficult when it comes to being transparent. So the thing to do is add a little bit of white into your yellow. And what happens then is it becomes opaque again. So if you wanted to do that, you could. Like that. Can you see the difference? So a little bit of yellow, a little bit of white on top. Mix it in on the surface, and that will send it down the transparent side. I'm also going to put the yellow here, but in a minute I'm going to mix an orange and I'm going to put some dots on there. So there we go, like that. Bit more yellow up here. This is quite a nice afternoon project to do, just filling in these little shapes. Now the other flower, again, is still a little bit wet up there, so I'm going to do the greens. Now with green, same problem as every other green in the universe, always a bit strong. So take a bit of green, add it into a bit of white, or even you can add the yellow in. Let's put some yellow in there, and that will make it nice and vibrant Make sure you've got no bits in it. Can you see? That's my hard paint just starting to melt. Just going to take some more of that. I'm actually making my yellow green there. I might take a clean brush and just try and absorb that. Okay, here we go. There's a nice green. So I'm going to just start painting the leaves because they're away from the wet areas. There's the green. That's quite nice. So there's one leaf. We can get away with doing this one because it's dry around it. So as I said, this is quite a sort of very illustrative graphic representation of a teacup. So you're not looking for masses of detail. You're going to enjoy the simplicity of the image. Okay. There. Again, if you want to strengthen things up, then have a look at making the colour, giving those leaves a second coat. While I'm waiting for the other bits to dry, I'm just going to put a shadow on just underneath here. And I'm going to actually use those two colours mixed together. So the pink purple colour that I used and the blue. And I'm just going to mix them. And that should create like a grey tone, which is ideal for, it's like a grey blue tone really. For the shadow, just here, while we're waiting for that to dry. So down underneath the saucer, like that. And you'll find that even though this looks really wet and light on the surface, once it dries, it'll dry darker because of what it's sitting on top of. Okay, if you want it to be darker, then just mix a bit of darker pigment in. There. I'm also going to put a similar sort of shadow just on the underside of the teacup, like that. Just in there, like that. Okay. Right, is that dry? Nearly, not quite. I'm just going to hairdryer it. There we go. Now that magenta colour I think we'll use next. So we're in with the magenta. Again, if you've not got this colour, then you can always use a bit of red mixed with a bit of white, a bit of purple, and that will give you a sort of magenta tone. Be careful about around these wet areas. Just realised that I missed a bit when painting the white. Just in there. I don't know whether you can see that. Just hoping that that green is dry. It seems to be. Now we're stopping at the rim there. can't actually see my pencil line where the rim is, so you have to remember that it's there. Okay, there we go. Let that dry off. While we're there, we can put some orange in. So I'm going to take a bit of the yellow and add it to a bit of red. Make an orange. Now, your orange will depend very heavily upon what yellow you use and what red you use. So I've got a sort of burnt orange there, as a result of the fact that I've used like an alizarin crimson red. Okay, that's why. I'm okay with that. If you've got a bright orange, great. If you've already got an orange mixed in your tubes, then that's great. But you can just put in, using the end of a detailed brush, just go in and put some dots on the centre of that flower. Try and work in a circle like I'm doing, and then it'll have some kind of rhythm to the marks that you're making. On the pink one, I think what I'll do is I'll use that same red. So this is an alizarin crimson. I'm just going to paint the centre out like that, and I'm not worrying too much about the fact that it's dry this time, because if it bleeds a little bit, it'll be fine. And in the end, I'll put some little dots on there, very much like I've done here, but in black. Okay. Now, I accidentally put my finger on my saucer here. I don't know if you can see, and there's a little bit of blue gouache gone in there. So I'm just going to just put some wet on it and lift it off. Okay, so next, shadow. I think we'll take some, I've got some grey here. I'm just going to add that, a little bit of that to my pink and blue mix, just to darken it up a touch. And you could use a little tiny bit of black if you wanted. And I'm just going to put a shadow on the inside of this cup handle here, where it touches the cup. Just going to put a shadow, and it would be sort of like this. Okay, like that. And then on, as you go up, on the inside, all the way around, like this, we want the shadow as well. On the bottom here, we're going to put another curved shadow, and then just around that ridge there. And then also just down, so underneath the rim, just down the edge, the very edge of that teacup, I'm just going to put a grey mark. I'm also going to put another little line just on the very tip of this, like that. That's just a form shadow, so where the form of the handle changes shape there. Then we're going to put a shadow on the inside of this rim, just partially, not the whole way. I'm going to put the main pigment there, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some water and I'm just going to smooth so it gets thinner. Oops. Just put a bit of curve back on there, like that. So it gets thinner, a bit more water. as it comes into the middle of the teacup inner space, like that. More water. Just give it some water so that it knows where to go and where to stop. I just accidentally got a little bit just there. I'm just going to try and get rid of that. Right, so along, just smooth it in. Oops. You'll see that the underneath starts coming up on you, but that's kind of what we want. We want the shadow to be there, but we don't want it to be really strong. And we want it to be lighter on that side than it is on the other. Okay, I'm just going to reduce that down a touch there. Okay, there we go. Now what next? Shadow here. So again, just a touch, just on the inside of that, in the grey, on the inside of that rim, like this. And again, just a bit of water and just smooth it into the form, like that. Okay, there we go. Maybe a touch over here. I'm just going to define the end of that, oops, handle there with this shadow, like that. Just a touch, let the paint run out of the brush. There we go. Okay, so now we're ready to put some dark marks on that central flower. And I'm just going to use grey because I haven't got any black to hand. You choose what colour you want to do it with. And we're just going to put little tiny dots on here too, like that. There. Okay. Now I've noticed that on the teacup I sent you, the shadow's in the opposite direction, but because I situated the cup over to the right hand side in my composition, that's why I changed the direction of the shadow. So don't be confused by that. I'm just going to put another layer just on these bits here, just because it's a little bit patchy. Okay, there we go. Now, the next thing to do is to define. Now you can choose to do that with pens, or you can do it with a fine brush. So if you've got a little diddy brush like this, and you've got some, I don't know if I've got any black. Oh yes, I have. I think that's black. Maybe that's black. Let me try. Oh no, it's a dark purple. That's a grey. I'm not sure I've got black in my gouache set here. What's that? Oh no, that might be, no, that's dark blue, but that'll do. So I've got a really dark blue here, but you can use a pen, an acrylic pen, a Sharpie, whatever you want. If your hand is not steady enough, then go for a pen, and you can just do these details and also go round the outline of your forms. But again, like I said, you need a really fine brush and a steady hand for this job. So if you're at all shaky, one thing you can do is stabilise your hand against the surface, or your whole arm even, and that helps enormously. So do what you can, but like I said, if it's impossible, then please just take a marker pen, or even not do it at all. You might be completely charmed with the cup as it is. So I'm going to finish this off in time lapse. Okay, so look at your teacup, decide where you're going to put your gold paint. Now, I have this Posca pen gold marker. They do gold Sharpies, you have gold metallic markers. Hopefully you will have one. If not, you can go and buy yourself one, or you can use some gold paint or gold ink and just give yourself a wobbly. It's got to be sort of, this is a china cup and it's not perfect. So we're going to put a gold edge on there. We're going to put a bit of gold on the teacup itself in places, on the handle should I say. You could even do a ridge coming up the inside like this, like that, which is quite cool. Around the ridge of the saucer, change the angle of the paper as you're moving around the curve, and it makes it a lot easier to join things up. Now let's put another one just on the underside, but not all the way around, just on the underside like that. Here we can do the whole of the underside in this gold like that. You could even fill it in if you wanted to. So these gold markers are great because they're very precise. They have a small nib. This is a uni, I think it's 0.7, yeah, 0.7 millimeter nib. So you can get all different sizes, but they're really good to use and they cover nicely. But like I said, this is acrylic, right? So remember, if you make a mark and it's a mistake, there's no getting it off. You have to go back in and paint it out. I'm going to make this edge a little thicker and I'm going to put some lumps on it, some bumps like that, because it's kind of lumpy if you look at it on the picture. And it's where the lumps and bumps of the making process have come through, and I quite like that. So just putting some little bumps here and there. Same on here. I might just put a little lumpy bit there. And it adds to the character of the piece if it's a bit thick in places, like there and there. Maybe do another one there. All right. If you've got any lines, you can go over them afterwards. You can even put a second coat on if you want once it's dry. And the other thing is you can put some gold on to the flowers that you've done. So you could easily just put in some extra lines, some extra dots on this surface. And if you've got multiple pens of this nature, there's no reason why you couldn't go in and do marks everywhere, you know, in different colours. You don't have to use the gold. Okay, they make really nice cards, these images. So if you fancy doing something with your little cup, then get it printed on some cards, send them to your friends, invite them for afternoon tea, do something fun like that. And the other thing I didn't think of was actually putting some flowers onto the surface of the saucer. So maybe you could draw some sort of flower forms just in, well, you could paint it on, or you could do it in the gold onto the surface of the saucer like this. It adds to the interest. You know, you don't necessarily have to use colour, but it just adds to the interest. Okay, I hope you enjoy this. Add to it if you want to. You can always add some extra bits and bobs around. You could maybe do a scone over here or whatever. Okay, that's it for now. Hope you enjoy. Like I said, if you don't have gouache, I do recommend you get some. It's a great paint to use. But if you don't, then you can use white watercolour and mix white watercolour into your paints, and that will create a gouache. Okay, bye for now. See you next time.